Protect your creative work. This is step 3 of my creator success framework. So you've poured your heart and soul into creating something amazing, but what happens if somebody copies it or claims it as their own? Securing your intellectual property isn't just smart, it's essential for building a lasting creator business. So let's talk about how to protect what's yours. Here we go. Hi there, I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer. Welcome back to this episode of Legit Podcast Pro. This is the third in our series on the 5-step framework for success as a creator business. And if you missed steps 1 and 2, well, we talked about running your podcast as a business and building your team, and 2 foundational steps that set you up for long-term success in this kind of an endeavor. Well, today we're talking about securing your intellectual property, or as I like to call it, locking the door to your creative house. This topic is especially important because your intellectual property is one of the most valuable assets that you have as a creator. It's your brand, your content, and your ideas. But without the right protections in place, it's vulnerable to theft or misuse. So let's dive into what intellectual property is, why it matters, and the steps that you can take to protect it. Well, intellectual property, or IP as we sometimes shorthand it, is a legal concept that gives you ownership over your creative work. It comes up in 4 different categories. There are copyrights, which protect original creative works like your episodes, your scripts, your videos, and blog posts and things like that. And your trademarks. These safeguard your brand identity. This includes your podcast title, logo, tagline, sometimes segment titles, things like that. Patents cover inventions or unique processes, though this is usually less relevant for most creators, unless you're an inventor, of course. And trade secrets protect confidential business information like marketing strategies, subscriber lists, recipes, formulas, things like that may or may not apply. So for creators, the focus is usually on copyright and trademark, so we will spend most of our time on that. Copyright protects the expression of your ideas when it's expressed in a tangible and saved in a tangible form. Fixed, they call it. This includes your podcast episodes, your blog posts, your videos, photographs, music. And here's the good news. Your work is automatically protected by copyright from the moment that you create it. But registering that copyright adds an extra layer of protection that is well worth it. It provides proof of ownership, that is an official record that you created the work. It gives you better enforcement rights, that is, you can actually go in court and sue for damages if someone infringes on your rights. And it gives you access to statutory damages and attorney's fees awards if you do have to sue and you win. So registering your copyright is actually not a very complicated process. You go to the U.S. Copyright Office website over at copyright.gov and create an account and complete a registration form. Then you upload a copy of the work and pay the filing fee, which ranges from $45 to $65, depending on the kind of work. I think most podcast episodes are the higher number, 65. And listen, if you're producing a series of episodes or videos, you can sometimes batch register multiple works to save time and money if you do it before they are published. So if you know you're doing 5 or 10 episodes of a cycle and you want to register that, make them, register them, then publish them in sequence. Next up is step 2, trademark your brand. Your brand is your identity in the marketplace, and a trademark will help protect it. Trademarks cover things like your podcast title and name, logo, slogan, and they prevent others from using similar marks in a way that would confuse your audience. Trademarks matter because they establish your exclusive right to use the brand. They help you build trust with your audience by ensuring consistency and eliminating confusion, and they add value to your business, especially if you license or decide to sell your company in the future. Registering a trademark is a little more complex than with copyright, but basically, step 1 is to conduct a detailed trademark search to ensure that your name or logo isn't already in use. You can use the USPTO's Trademark Electronic Search System at uspto.gov, but it's a good idea to do a more comprehensive search using a third-party trademark search service. It doesn't have to cost a fortune, but it'll save you a lot on application fees if you do find out something is a conflict and your application might not go through. Assuming it's all clear, Then you file your application online with the USPTO, that's the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And you'll need to be able to provide a clear identification, of course, of who you are, as well as a clear description of the mark and the class or classes of goods or services that the mark will cover. You also have to show a specimen. That's a sample showing that the mark is actually in use in interstate commerce, and pay a filing fee, which is now $350 for each of those classes of goods or services. Now, this is a bit more complex than a copyright, so it probably is a good idea to at least consult with an attorney and maybe hire them to do the trademark registration for you. Hey, it's what I'm here for. Okay. Use licensing and contracts wisely. This is step 3 of our discussion today. Sometimes you'll want to use a third party's content in your work, or you'll decide to collaborate with others. Licensing agreements and clear contracts for these kinds of things are your best tools for protecting your rights and avoiding disputes. So, for example, if you're using music in your podcast, you've got to get a license from the owner of the copyright in the musical composition. That's the songwriter's part of the contribution, and the sound recording, what we call a master recording. And that usually belongs to the record label, or if it's an independent, then it would belong directly to the artist. And if you're hiring a graphic designer, make sure your contract includes a work made for hire clause so you know that you own the rights to the work the artist creates. Remember, contracts aren't just about preventing problems. They also set clear expectations and ensure that everybody's on the same page. I like to say, just the way good fences make good neighbors, good contracts make good business associates. All right, the fourth component of this is if someone does use your content or your brand without your permission, you can take action against these infringers. You can start with a cease and desist letter, and most of the time, that's enough to resolve the issue. If that doesn't work, and you need to, you can escalate to legal action. Having your intellectual property registered ahead of time, that preferably within 3 months of the first time you publish, makes enforcement of your intellectual property rights much, much easier and faster, because you'll have official documentation proving your ownership and evidence that there's protection in place. Next up, finally, securing your intellectual property is a critical step in providing and building a thriving creator-driven business. But by protecting your creative work, you are not just safeguarding your livelihood, you're making a statement. You're saying, hey, this is mine and it's worth protecting. Listen, if you'd like to dive deeper into these topics, you can check out my Easy Legal for Podcasters program over at easylegalforpodcasters.com. And that's where I cover a lot of this in much greater detail. And I actually show you, walking you through the step-by-step process for registering your copyrights, registering your trademarks, writing up your contracts, and everything you need to do to protect yourself. Also, I have a secret video lesson, a sample from the program that you can check out by going to gordonfiremark.com/level up. One word, level up. gordonfiremark.com/level up. Hey, if you're enjoying this series, I hope you'll be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single step, and then come back and join us for the next episode. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer. Please keep on creating and keeping it legal. See you next time.